morning, everyone. Can you listen to me well? Yeah. Okay. So thank you, Jordi, for the introduction. Thank you, Adriana. Thank you, Octavio. Thank you, Mapas, for having us here. And thank you, guys, for being here at this panel. I know this is like a very strange name, Platforms and Territories. It can be like a very big topic. We'll try to focus that on the most important things for the public. I will introduce my panel. I'm David. Jordi already made the presentation of who I am. I work for Unison. And at my left side, I have Kirstin Moffat. She's based in Barcelona, and she's the regional manager Africa at BMAT Music Innovators. Can you do a quick introduction on yourself, Kirstin, please?
Sure. So to start, BMAT Music Innovators is a music technology company based in Barcelona, and we connect all players in the industry. So driven by copyright expertise and machine learning, our system pumps neutral data and authoritative knowledge along the value chain, helping our partners improve their data operations and to ensure that artists get played. So in a nutshell, we fingerprint sound recordings from labels, collect data from publishers, and we track music along TV, radios, venues. We do digital streaming charts. We help report music across TV and do royalty payments. So I manage the business relationships across Africa as well as Middle East and facilitate all business development there.
Thank you, Kirstin. Now, at Kirstin's left side, it's Indre Boaretto. She's based in Paris, and she heads the Deezer global publishing team. Can you give us a background and what you do?
Yes, so some of you might know what Deezer does, I hope, which is a global music streaming service. And I had the publishing team since a couple of years now. I have legal background, but always was passionate about music publishing and worked at tech companies like Yahoo, Nokia, BMG in London, and now I've been having an adventure at Deezer.
Thank you very much, Indre. At Indre's left side, it's Gillian Ezra. She is based in Joburg and Johannesburg. It's the short nickname. So she's based in Johannesburg, and she had Simfi Africa Content and Engagement Department. Can you give us also a quick introduction and background?
Sure. So I work for an African super app called Ayoba, which unlike Deezer, none of you will have heard of, I'm sure, but we are one of the biggest apps in Africa. I'm actually a copyright lawyer, and I specialize in music licensing. I've been working in music streaming for most of my career. I actually had some time at Deezer as well. And at the moment, I'm licensing all kinds of content. It's really interesting seeing how other industries do licensing versus the music industry. But of course, music will always be my first love.
Thank you very much, Gillian. And at last, Gabriel Llano is based in São Paulo. He's the senior music partner Latam for ByteDance, aka TikTok. No, because sometimes people don't know what's ByteDance. So please give it a shot.
Thank you, Dave. Yeah, I work for ByteDance. That it's a massive technology company, and we own companies such as TikTok, Rezo, that it's a music streaming service, or SoundOn, a music distribution company. And I think that for the next 5 years, it's going to be one of the main players in the music industry, like generating new opportunities for artists in many fields, using technology. That in the end, it's what's driving consumption of music. And in the last 15 years, I've been working in labels, such as Universal, Sony. I was the head A&R of Sony ATV for South America, and I also was the artist and label relations for Deezer in past times.
So thank you, Gabriel. It seems that only Kirstin and me, we don't have a relation with Deezer either now or in the past. Maybe that's a sign. Okay. So yeah, so everybody introduce themselves. I forgot to tell you that this panel is about copyright licensing or the publishing rights in the digital environment. Like Adriana and Jordi said, those are very important but are sometimes forgotten by the indie community mainly. People think that what they earn through DistroKid or through these digital distributors, it's all the income that they are entitled to when their songs are played. And that's not true. That's what we are here to explain what are publishing rights in the digital landscape, also to explain the metadata challenges here, and also how to engage more, who are the main players, and basically to bring that to your attention so you can know more about that. I know that 30 minutes, it's very short. We tried to do it yesterday a little bit in our conversation, and we could go for 2 hours. So I'll try to be very, I will try to wrap it up. So my first question goes to you, Indre. We talk about publishing rights, but can you give like a ABC, like for dummies like me, or what are publishing rights, and what's the difference between that and the rights that artists and indie labels and publishers they receive from a digital distribution company?
So I think Jordi did a very good overview, good basis. So if we do a bit of a closer look, the publishing rights obviously are the rights on the composition, so melody and lyrics, in a nutshell. In a normal publishing licensing deal with a publishing house, you would cover such rights as print rights for sheet music. You would talk about synchronization rights, obviously, synchronizing with audiovisual content. You also would talk about the mechanical rights, reproduction of the composition on any support, and in digital platform that would be on the digital support, whatever it is at the time, and performance rights. Performance when the content is performed to some sort of audience or a public, so to speak. So essentially from a digital platform side, we constantly need to have and deal with licensing of mechanical and performance rights with all of the society. So that's a nutshell, I think.
Yeah, that's in a nutshell, yeah. Thank you very much for that. And every time you need to clear those performing rights and mechanical rights, so then you pay someone, and that someone or some entity will pay to the songwriters and artists,
exactly.
right? And taking on that, I would ask Gillian, is it easy to clear publishing rights, meaning when you need authorizations to have licensed music in your platform, is it easy? How does it go in a, like Jordi said, now it's a global landscape. How easy is it?
I think anyone who works in music licensing knows it's never easy. Publishing, I think, is particularly difficult because you don't have a guide that tells you who the publisher is. So in Africa in particular, we have publishing societies or CMOs in lots of different territories. Very often we can't reach them, and so you have to accrue the funds that would be paid to publishing until you can find that publisher. And I always have a lot of sympathy for music streaming services who are accused of not paying their publishing rights correctly, because there is not one place or one person that you can go to that tells you who owns that publishing, and then in fact it's probably 7 different publishing companies splitting it. So no, it is definitely not an easy thing to do, but the more you do it, the more experience you gain, the more you learn how to do it. But that is what I do. When I can't find the publisher, you know, there's a pretty much a standard rate that you pay both for mechanical and for performance. So I simply accrue it and I wait for them to find me. Because sooner or later, someone's going to say, where's my money?
Thank you for that, Gillian. I think that, well, in Eric's panel, the one after, there probably will be a discussion on also having like one single point of licensing for the entire world. There are clashing visions. I won't get on that topic. That topic will be discussed during the next panel. But yeah, taking on that, Gabriel, ByteDance, aka TikTok. No, okay, I will say only ByteDance or TikTok is not a traditional streaming platform and came up like with an hybrid unique model. You are inclusively pushing other, I cannot name them, but they are following your example in the content that, or the engagement that they try to have with artists and songwriters for their models. So what were the challenges for you as a new platform to establish a music licensing strategy on a global scale like you have?
I think that the challenge is still on because it's trying to create a new environment of how to use the music, because TikTok, it's not about going to hear music. It's about using music. If you go like to understand what's the role of music inside TikTok, I could define it as the artist, it's not the main player anymore, it's the songs. And what's the power of the song? The song becomes like a brick that the artists are giving users to create their own storytelling. And that's what's music about in TikTok. It's empowering users to tell stories or educate or generate entertainment or whatever. So it's a new concept of the use of music, and it's all based on the empowerment of users in this new digital environment. It's like DSPs brought democratization in the use of music. Everyone can hear the music whatever they want. And now it's the full democratization in the sense that now the marketing comes from the users. And that's what we do. We try to empower people to use music, and that's what's breaking the industry. And all the virality comes from that power. So trying to explain that to the music industry, in which I think that we have a big challenge in lawmaking. We're very behind in the lawmaking. We're still making laws for streaming, and now comes this new technology. So we're like stepping ahead, and this is a big challenge because you need to confront the reality, and no one is understanding it as fast as it should. So I think that's the big challenge for the moment.
Absolutely.
But if I may add as well, to build on what Gabriel said, there are a lot of very interesting initiatives because technology has evolved, and there's an extremely interesting opportunities with the technologies at hand today. Going back to the challenges of clearance, though, usually that generates the rights that we are not even sure what they are, who to go to, and when we find who to go to, there is not necessarily a business plan. That's if we're lucky, because then we discuss the business plan and fine, we go down that road. But a lot of the times, the door is very much closed. So we come to a place where the door is closed. So those initiatives are not met with open hands, open minds. So that's what also we have to, it's part of the, I guess, education, trying to open the doors, trying to find new ways of licensing that content, because everybody will benefit from it in the end. Artists, creators, rights holders, all the way down the line. So that's just something I'd like to share as a message for all of us here.
To further strengthen your message, and I want to be very clear, I'm a copyright lawyer. I'm an enormous believer in the system of copyright. There's actually there's a system of copyleft, funny enough, that is also very important. So do not take what I'm going to say as any kind of a comment against copyright. But it is interesting to note that the three of the biggest businesses in music, being YouTube, SoundCloud, and TikTok, all started with no licensing as illegal services, just as Indre is saying, because they couldn't get licensing. Not because they were bad guys and they didn't want to get licensing, but because people didn't have the vision that they had, which I suppose you can understand because technology comes from a completely different perspective. But think about how different our industry would be without those three businesses, which are where music discovery is happening alongside music streaming. So it's an important point.
Yeah. Totally. Like, for example, TikTok is celebrating the first year with full music catalog of all labels. 1 year, only 1 year. We ended signing deals on February last year.
Yeah, and for the public to know this, well, I have to disagree in some point there, but also agree in other point, because I always remember speaking with a friend of mine who's a very traditional legal mindset guy, and now, for instance, in the pandemic with the live streamings and all of the stuff that we start looking at, like, okay, but how do you license that? Or new realities like TikTok or even Meta when they came up. We have bases like Berne Convention, the base, like I know this is like very legal jargon, but we have like a Berne Convention. It's almost applicable worldwide, right? And it's a good basis for like using the concepts and trying to apply them to realities, although with the challenges of like completely different models. Like you said, Gabriel, we now approved the European Copyright Directive 2019. It's being transposed, but it's already outdated, part of it. And so we have to go to the basics and then use the basics like general principles of law where we can drink the ideas, but not monopolizing the conversation and bringing another very important part, because before there was Deezer, there was Simfy. and there was a bunch of metadata there, because this is all about metadata, like Jordi explained. It's about licensing, so there are licenses, and those licenses they pay, but you want the payments also to go to the correct indie artist, to the correct songwriter. You don't want the money, and we'll talk about that later, to go to like only to the major players. But then it comes TikTok and Meta and etc., and the amounts of metadata are huge, and it's a big challenge for entities like us to process that. And BMAT, what they do, it's they sort of create this bond between platforms and licensors. So it must be daunting, no, to deal with billions or trillions of lines. What are the challenges that you face in today's digital landscape of metadata?
Well, so the biggest challenge is that the right hand doesn't speak to the left hand. So the publishers and the labels, they don't necessarily, sit together and have this massive conversation and share information or metadata. So the usage reports, which we would receive from the licensees, the music streaming services, would contain perhaps only record label information and doesn't necessarily have the information of which the publishers have. So we have to rely on common identifiers, which, step one, there's a DDEX, which is a digital data exchange. We try everyone to get to speak the same language, use the same standards. We rely on that, and then of course we need to rely on the claiming that happens from the licensors to the streaming services in order to start to put the copyright picture together. Yeah. And so what we do at BMAT is we help facilitate that process, and we also are creating a reconciled database, creating links between sound recordings and publishing metadata.
Okay, thank you for that. Just for the ones of you that are not like familiar, I will try to explain it like in a nutshell. Like an entity like Unison managing publishing rights for songs like Setangana songs, or what we do, it's a platform sends us the information of everything that was played in a specific period of time, let's say a month or a quarter. We receive that information, which is huge information, and we work with a partner like BMAT that they will match the usage in that platform against the works or the rights that we represent for that period of time. And from that matching, there is a tariff which is discussed between our entity and the platforms, which will apply to that usage. So, and then it generates royalties that are distributed to songwriters and music publishers. But entering to, this is my favorite question, I'm sorry guys, but no, it's, because I was not aware of that before, the market-centric models against user-centric models. I don't know if the public is familiar with this, but first explain what was the problem, what is the problem, and then explain Deezer's initiative on this, and I would have comments from all of you on this. Market-centric versus user-centric. What is that, Indre, and why it's so important?
Yes, thank you, David, for this question. Very dear to our hearts. So we currently are on a market-centric payment system. What that means is that the royalties calculation are based on a system whereby the more streamed works attract more royalties, which in essence mean that the subscription fees of a particular user, some of it goes to artists that they have never listened to.
So if my 9.99 euros from Spotify, even if I don't listen Ed Sheeran, they will go to Ed Sheeran, a part of them.
I don't know your listening playlist, but but this could be a possibility.
It was an example. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. And so obviously, with a market-centric payment system, something to add. So currently, we've been following and comparing the two systems, the user-centric as well. With market-centric system, 32% of users distribute 72% of revenues on the platform. It's just something sort of to ponder about. So obviously, UCPS, user-centric payment system, whereby the subscription fees of a particular user are redistributed to the artists and creators that the user has listened to for that particular period of time that he paid for. And it comes to correct that anomaly of the pro rata market share pull, so to speak. It also fights some of the fraud. And it also, very interestingly, encourages niche music genres, and what often translates into also local music genres. So in Germany, you see a huge uplift for Schlager, in UK or elsewhere classical and jazz music. Obviously in Brazil, sertanejo, gospel, yeah. So it's a really really interesting takeaway, I think. And from our point of view, it's the most fair and transparent system of distribution of royalties. And we try to make industry go in that direction.
That's super important. Like we were saying, I think the majority of the self-published artists or songwriters or the indie sector, they're probably not aware of this. They don't understand it, and the general public, people don't understand that in the majority of the platforms, what they would be paying for doesn't go like to the Morna music from Cabo Verde that they are listening, or to the local Colombian artist, or to the South African composer. They don't understand that, and
it's when we started sort of a broader talking about it campaign, we realized how little people knew about this and where their subscription contribution went to. So that was rather surprising. Everybody thought that we were already on the system, which wasn't the case.
And in that case, for like TikTok and Simfy, in terms of like engagement and content in your own platforms, would this create, or this would help build like more diversity, more payments to the songwriters who don't receive it? How do you see this type of initiative?
Well, we run a very unusual streaming service because it's a super app. So there is free playlists, just 20 a week in each territory, which comes with free data because we're part of the biggest telco group in Africa. But we also have games, and we have 150 editorial channels. So it is not possible to determine the market share the way you do it in traditional music streaming. So actually, we pay a flat rate per stream. So in a funny way, we're already using the user-centric model because there was no other way to determine the true value of that song. So we actually pay a flat rate per stream, which is quite an interesting situation in music streaming. And in the app, it's a very interesting thing because in any app you have the tension of which content do people like. Are they looking at music TikToks? Are they looking at crazy dogs? Are they looking at dances? What are they looking at? And I have something of that kind of tension in my app because sometimes my music streaming penetration rate is up because there was a big hit this week from Burna Boy or one of our wonderful African artists. And sometimes there's a new game, and games penetration goes up and music comes down. So, you know, when I started in music, and I started in music when we were still selling CDs, so no one is allowed to calculate how old I am. I used to have a poster on my door that said, "It's all about the song." Nothing has changed. It's still all about the song. When you have a great song, it's affecting all of us on this stage. It's taking the engagement of our users, that song, in such different ways. That's the amazing part of the technology that we work for. So whilst the daily activity of my job has changed in terms of engagement, it's still all about the song.
It's all about the song. That's beautiful. We also have like an initiative with Deezer and also with other partners. When I say we, I mean Unison. It's about the other part, the less spoken part of the song, which is the lyrics. So we have a project which is called Balam, a EU-funded project where we are trying to get the good quality lyrics and lyric translation to all over the world, and like that requires a lot of not only awareness activities, but also technical requirements, so you can have like not purely Google translation, which will sort of quit the meaning of the original words. And with that, the purpose is to bring the possibility for me to understand the language from Hungary. When I listen to a song, I can read the lyrics in my own language, and that would also help democratize music. Those are like utopic dreams that I think all of us share here, like that the monies that we pay for the digital, they are growing a lot. Now all the reports, CSAC reports, they show that digital is becoming one of the most, the biggest source of revenues for songwriters and publishers worldwide. But also, if we need to democratize that, we need to have like user-centric models. We have to have lyrics and having the possibility for us in another country to understand the songs. Like Gillian said, it's all about the song. Talking about songs, and before opening the Q&A to the public, I would like to also ask you, Gabriel, you are based in Brazil, but you take like TikTok for LATAM. So Brazil and LATAM, those are like huge markets for like millions and millions of people. What is the main difference you find between Brazil and the other LATAM countries in terms of like the monopolies or the conditions of licensing there? How is it your role to do there in LATAM?
That's a very interesting question because, and Gustavo is here from Abramos, and the first thing is that Brazil is part of LATAM.
Okay.
And we always say like Brazil and LATAM. We're generating the separation in concept, and that's something that actually in TikTok we are changing right now. Since next Monday, Brazil is part of LATAM, and we're going to work as a whole team because we need to work as a region.
Like a region,
a
LATAM
whole region.
As
it doesn't
region.
matter, we have a language barrier, we're like putting that down, and we're going to start working as a whole for the region because that's going to empower us versus the world.
Okay.
So I think that's a first part. And the second part is that I think Brazil is years ahead of the Spanish-speaking countries because of the volume of the industry.
Okay.
Brazil has a self-service ecosystem that it's very well developed for all type of artists in which they can record, tour, and live only with local income. And that's very good for Brazil. But that's because of the population they have. Sao Paulo is an 80 million city. You know, that's like half of Colombia in one city.
Can I interrupt you there? Do you think, I know that this is going a step further, but do you think that that's why also Brazilian music, which is so good, you have so many genres, but that's why they don't need, like, you don't see it a lot in being like consumed in Africa and Europe. We are talking about here in Mapas about the South Atlantic, so the need for that connection. What?
Of course, because this is a rough way to say it, but big Brazilian artists lose money if they invest outside Brazil. Because it's going to cost a lot of money to generate the income they generate in Brazil in other countries. They need to go, they need to do promotion, they need to tour. But if they invest that money in Brazil, they're going to go bigger.
Okay.
And they record a CD, they start the promotion, and they tour in Brazil, and they could last a year and a half touring only in Brazil. So by the time they finish that tour, they need to release a new album.
And stay in
and
Brazil.
They record it locally, and that was a 3-year cycle.
Yeah. Okay.
So they do it and repeat, and they go bigger and bigger and bigger. So if they go out of Brazil, they're going to lose that traction.
Okay.
So it's not a good investment to put it in a certain way.
That's very interesting. So there's when publishing rights, digital publishing rights, they can be like global without the need to go outside. You can use like social networks and the music platforms and etc. to have that extra revenue coming from abroad, although they can focus on their market. And with that, to have good royalties flowing from the digital landscape, you need to have good metadata again. But normally what you know, guys, when you upload like music to DistroKid or TuneCore or CD Baby or they ask you for an ISRC, which is the International Standard Recording Code that's used to designate master rights, neighboring rights, not publishing rights. And there's another identification or identifier, it's called the ISWC, that you are normally not asked for when you upload something into those music distribution platforms. So, Kirstin, what's the difference between the ISWC and the ISRC? And do you think that it should be requested at the platform? It should be like democratized, you know, like everyone having access to it?
So, well, the ISRC represents the sound recording and the ISWC the work. And I could argue yes and no. I would say that liberalizing the model for ISWC would be very challenging because it would introduce a lot of complications with duplicates, which we know happens in ISRC, and that would become insane with payments and tracking, etc. In another light, I think that the general model needs to consider different environments. And because you need to be a member of a CMO or, you know, through your publisher to get that ISWC, a lot of regions in the world, a lot of indie artists, for instance, in Africa, there are no functioning collective management organizations, or they're still in development, and that creates the difficulty. So I wouldn't necessarily advocate for it from the get-go, because I think there are steps before that need to come into place. I would advocate for educating platforms about publishing rights, starting a conversation between the publishers, labels, distributors, you know, joining, creating stronger links, and then of course to, facilitate, you know, education directly to the artists, not just to the publishers.
It's like a lot of royalties are being lost, mainly in the continent.
Yes.
Due to the lack of at least publishing royalties. It's not only a matter of not having ISWCs, but also some countries not working. But it's not only in the continent, it's also in some parts of Europe and also Latin and Brazil,
It's everywhere, and
so
it's
a bigger problem.
I mean, even when we have the ISRC from the one party and the ISWC from the other party, that in itself is the first challenge, because we do still have to link the two somehow. But there is the underlying consideration of, well, you know, the metadata doesn't exist in some parts. And that needs to be addressed first. For us, a neutral data company, we are as good as the metadata we receive. And we need to work with both parties in order to create the copyright picture.
Okay. Thank you for that. Just last question to all of you. I know this is a hot topic, but some studies and some inquiries, they found that publishing rights, like songwriters and lyricists, they receive like less than 20% of all the digital income cake. So I would say, like, if a digital platform, not naming any, but a digital platform, from the 100 euros that they pay, 85 euros would go to the label side, label artist side, but more label than label side, and then only 15 euros would go to the songwriter side. There is the publisher as well. So, do you think that the future is to have a more equal split between both sides of it?
It's an interesting question, and I don't think it can be answered very quickly. But I think context is important here, historic context, right?
Totally.
So we come from a time of distribution of CDs. Some of you might remember how much publishers were paid from those CDs. And I can assure you it was not 20%. Also, at the time when streaming services came on board, we had terrible challenges with piracy, right? So again, we started off with already an increased rate than on the CDs. It was around 8%, I think, at the time. We have come to between 12 and 15% today. We doubled, right? So I find that it's really important to put this in context. Now, us as a DSP, we're constantly being pulled into two different directions and pools. And we need both of those pools of rights holders for us to be able to exploit the content. I mean, if the rights holders in question, they agree on a different split, we're happy to accommodate. Because is it for a DSP to decide the redistribution of this value?
Yeah.
I personally don't think so.
Yeah.
I want to support what you're saying. Sometimes change has to come from within. The licensors themselves have to make that change. If the industry, as in the music, as in the industry representing the rights of composers, artists, etc., if they want to make that change and come together, because as Kirstin says, there's not enough communication there, then it is something that a DSP would easily accommodate. But at the moment, DSPs are paying out 70 to 75% in terms of the cost of sale. And if you just look at it in terms of a retail industry, at the end of the day, we are the retailer. And that is an unheard of margin in retail. If you sell something to a supermarket or to a pharmacy, they put a minimum 100% markup on it. And music, in fact, is much more democratic than that, because, in fact, the cost of sale is 70 to 75%. So DSPs cannot accommodate a higher rate for publishing unless collectively the industry representing the music creators comes together and decides that something else has to decrease, and that is not our decision to make. We are trying to run a service that is very expensive, and it is not our decision to make.
And the digital cake that you were referring to, it is what it is, essentially, right? We can increase a certain percentage the prices. It increases the cake to be shared still with the same challenges that you raised. But we also have to be mindful of which users are ready to pay and the market. And you cannot increase those prices indefinitely. So that's something to be kept in mind, I think, because then we go back where users potentially can look for alternative solutions where all of us could lose out. I don't know, back to piracy, for instance, right? So again, this is something just to ponder upon.
Of course, in the end, I think it's important to have a renegotiation process, because that's distribution of wellness. And that's always, in theory, it's going to be good. But as she was saying, context, it's very important in this question. And if you go to the revenue chart, you see in '99, we have a peak of the revenue of CDs. Then it falls down very drastically until 2012, when Deezer started with streaming, because it was the first one. And then it went up, and we're now at the same level that in '99 in revenue. But if you do an internal analysis of developing markets, and as a Colombian or as a Latino, I could say that I've never seen an explosion of talent such as what it's living today. We have analyzed the content that it's in Spotify, Deezer, Apple Music, or TikTok playlists, and almost they're composed of 85% of local talent. And why is that happening? Because investment could come in that came from that revenue, that it's propelling all these local artists.
Talking about label investment
and the publishing,
partners
and the publishing side also. Like, for example, Medellin in Colombia is now like the biggest city to produce and the biggest city for authors to be in Latam. And there's a lot of revenue from publishers and independent publishers coming in. And like old labels, local labels that were completely broke are appearing again because they're generating revenue and they're able to invest. So, of course, I would advocate to try to negotiate that, but in a certain sense, we will also need to applaud that revenue is coming and that they're investing in local talent.
Okay. It's quite a topic, and we could go on and on and on with this. Thank you very much, guys. I will open the floor for a Q&A before doing the coffee break. We have like 5 minutes. I don't know if anyone has any question about the panel to Gabriel, Gillian, Indre, or Kirstin. Okay, no question from the public. So I think we can leave it as it is. Thank you very much. It was super.
There's a question.
Oh, there's a question. Okay. Okay. Sí, por supuesto.
Gracias. Quería preguntar a Unison si es que, por ejemplo, hacen cobros retroactivos por ejemplo, en el caso de YouTube, si es que hay, digamos, que cobros que no se han realizado por los últimos 10 o 15 años, si eso también entra dentro de su panorama.
Okay.
Luego...
Intentaré no olvidarme de la primera.
Ya,
sí.
ok. Otra pregunta. En el caso, por ejemplo, yo como compositora y cantante, si interpreto el tema de otro autor y lo subo en una plataforma de las que es previo a la distribución, ¿no? Muchas veces estas plataformas no tienen, no te hacen las suficientes preguntas como para separar, creo, los rubros, ¿no es cierto? Entonces, el autor de ese tema puede bloquear mi interpretación. Entonces, si ustedes sirven también como entidad de conexión entre autores y compositores. ¿Está clara esa pregunta?
Sí, entonces yo creo me enfocaría, bueno, me acuerdo de la primera y que dice respecto al retroactivo, ¿no? Que decía, no en el caso específico de YouTube, pero en todas. Ayer estábamos justo discutiendo esto. Sorry, I'm answering in Spanish. I think you now all understand it, right? So estamos discutiendo esto ayer con Gabriel también y con Gustavo, porque realmente no hay una padronización mundial de los plazos de recaudo. O sea, en Unison sí que, contestando a tu pregunta, sí que lo hacemos y sí que entra dentro de nuestra gestión, ¿ok? Gestionar el retroactivo, o sea, el backclaim, por los 18 o más meses que va siempre a depender del acuerdo que tengas con la plataforma digital, del acuerdo que Unison tenga con Deezer o tenga con TikTok o con Simfy, va a depender de esto. O sea, se puede acordar, pero en países como Brasil, por ejemplo, Gustavo nos explicaba ayer también, y Gabriel, que Brasil, por ley, tiene un plazo bastante fuerte, que son 36 meses, ¿correcto, Gustavo? 60 meses, por ley, de retroactivo, lo que presenta después bastantes problemas en la parte operativa, en términos de los proveedores y de las plataformas, pero que para los titulares de derechos es algo que es natural, ¿no? Tener 5 años de posibilidad, porque la black box era y es gigante, ¿no? Y cuando vas a coger lo que hay atrás, en términos de backclaim, tú vas a intentar identificar otra vez lo que no has podido identificar. Pero después del backclaim, y esto casi se conecta con la pregunta sobre user-centric models, después del backclaim, ¿cuál es la tendencia del mercado? Es hacer algo que se llama los residuals, ¿no? Los residuales. Y los residuales ya no van por la granularidad que nosotros abocamos. No sé si, perdona mi portuñol, que hay palabras que yo no sé en castellano y me sale portugués o inglés. Entonces, ¿qué es el residual y cómo se distribuye normalmente? Va por market share. O sea, si Unison o otra entidad para este periodo ha recaudado o ha tenido un 2% de market share, pues el residual se va a repartir así. Y esto es algo que no es perfecto y, bueno, Gabriel también seguramente concordará, si las plataformas, porque ellos tienen que distribuir las royalties, ¿no? No se van a quedar con que es dinero de los compositores y autores.
Save the money if they do. We need to put the money aside.
You need to put the money aside because it's like money for the songwriters and the composers and all of that. But at the same time, entities like Unison, like Abramos, like Capasso, we don't want to be distributing money to the wrong songwriters, you know? We want to, that's the future, that's what we were talking about. Perdona que lo cambié para inglés, para traducir. That's the future. It's like each and every penny with cooperation of BMAT, but also with the symbiosis between the DSPs, the music platforms, and the entities. It's to, if this cent belongs to Toquinho, it goes to Toquinho. If it belongs to the Solange from Cabo Verde, it goes to Solange. It won't go to Cesária Évora. It won't go to Juanita. That's the motto. So yeah, answering to your question, firstly, yes, we do that. Also, the deadlines depend on the agreements that you have and on the local law, and it's different between Europe, LATAM, including Brazil, Brazilian LATAM, Brazilian LATAM, and Africa. And also in Joram's panel, the next panel will have like several entities from different continents, which they are like experts on that as well, and you can also have their input. Yeah, because we need to have a coffee. But then Gustavo, Jotam, and Solange, they can also give their input from their own countries. The second question, sorry, can you
Yes, the second
it?
question is concerned if I, as a singer, sing...
A singer, not a songwriter, a
no,
singer.
I am as a singer, I sing somebody else's song.
Okay.
And, you know, I didn't speak to them. I just recorded it and put it up online, no? So, if that person doesn't want, or has this alert system, you know, that his song is being played by somebody else and he's not getting the money, so that song is being put down.
If we do that
it's being blocked. No, so if you do the connection between the author and the interpreter.
Mm-hmm. If you are putting something online without the authorization, I would say that the first thing you need would be a law firm, because if they, you know, just kidding. But yeah, in principle, but we know that happens a lot. So yeah, we don't have that specific like topic, I would say, in our motto or what we do. But certainly, if it's something that's good for our songwriters and music publishers, because we discussed this a lot with the pandemic, and you know, the labels, court actions, or at least the actions that they took against Twitch and etc. There are like two main approaches, I would say, in our biz. There is music, like they explained in the panel. The music is there, and then they license, right? That's sort of the same thing you are saying. So the music is there, and there is an authorization from one side, and then they license. There are two different approaches here. One, you take it down and you sue. You say, you have no authorization, take it down or I sue. And there's another option, which is like sitting down with the platforms, everyone sitting down and say, okay, if we take it down, this will be hurtful for songwriters, for artists, for indie small labels and indie publishers. So let's sit down and find an agreement. Sometimes it's possible, sometimes it's not. But I would say that at Unison we also advocate for that. Like music platforms, they are not our enemies. They are our partners. We shouldn't demonize them because they're also promoting the songwriters, and they are putting, if they don't, so it's like the logic. I assume I can say this. If Jordi, if I'm saying something wrong, Jordi will look at me with it. So it's my boss. So yeah, I think that at Unison we advocate for that to help. I wouldn't say as something that we should look at like, okay, it's cool for you to upload works without having the authorization. That's not good, and the authorization should always come first. So you shouldn't do that. But if it happens, so we will try to connect and obtain the authorizations to pay the royalties. That's the way. And then coffee break now, yeah. Thank you guys, and after this coffee break there will be a panel with the local entities, with Joram from Capasso, Gustavo from Abramos, Brazil, Capasso from South Africa, Eric from Unison, and Solange from SEM Cape Verde. So I think it will be very interesting. Thank you very much, guys. Thank you.